Okay, 145. I don't. What do you want to do, Ms. Gray? Mr. Zlotnick, come back up here. 145. You had a suggestion on 145.
Well, with all due respect, I appreciate that you identified these as my suggestions, even if they've been council members' requests. On this issue, it's the same issue, use of supplemental. And then, I'm just going to put on the table, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get an argument with you because you have your point of view, and I certainly appreciate that. But this whole notion that the contractors and the projects have expectations of water delivery at amounts forever and that you're setting a standard in wet years that we expect that every year, we are very aware that we do not get that every year. We are very aware that the contracts are subject to environmental regulation and the state board and ESA and everything else. That's why we do what we do. And so part of the issue here is that the document reflects, quite frankly, at this point, we don't know what the view of the rest of the council is, and that's part of why we have the discussion. But your particular view that is sort of the context within which the projects operate. And we just object to that. Frankly, we do not think that's the case. We understand the limitations of the system probably better than most, and we try to deal with it day to day. And we are investing significant ratepayer dollars in trying to improve the reliability of that system. And so, anyway, the issue here in 145 was, again, the use of supplemental water, which I appreciate Joe's comments and the council's allowing some additional language to talk about the core supply issue. But then also here the objection was to some expectations, an opinion that there's an expectation out there. And so that was the issue. That was the issue here.
Can I respond?
Yes, Joe.
The reason that it's written this way is not because the contractors don't understand, but we think that actually there has been an expectation created by many people. So when I drive down I-5 or down the 99, I see signs along the side of the road. We paid 100%, and we only got 40% of our contract amounts. And that is a perception that maybe the contractors themselves don't have, but certainly many, many people associated with getting water out of the projects have. And I think it's important that we point out that expectation is there, and that expectation was based on things that haven't happened. It was based on the assumption we were going to build lots of additional facilities that have never been built. I
appreciate that clarification, Joe. And then, if that's the case, a suggestion would be an expectation among some, or by some.
Okay. I mean, it's not really.
Ms. Gray, you want to give staff permission to tinker with that language? Okay, without objection, tinker with the language.
We'll think about it. I mean,
don't screw it
how
up.
about over the clear and vociferous objection of the contractors, their constituents, board members, chambers of commerce, locally elected politicians, all say that they are entitled to the full contracted potential amount of the water.
Yeah, but say that really nicely so nobody gets offended.
We'll discuss it again in September.
Okay. Go back, please, to the list on page 1, item 80.
Yeah,
this was local, Don.
Yeah, it's clear. You're adding local. That was my note.
Okay, so that's okay with you? All right, without objection, the change recommended by staff on line 80 would be included. Okay. Line 81, Ms. Marcus has raised this issue about the need to remind people that we can update the Delta plan at our discretion. We don't have to wait for a fifth year to do it. And I think that was just a drafting change, Joe. What's your preference?
I want Martha to tell me. She actually had a conversation with
That
Felicia.
is correct. That was one of the points that Felicia was making, and the other is that she wants to affirmatively note that the council will immediately start on several big items that will cause it to be revised within a year or two. For example, levy prioritization, governance review of structure, finance, incorporation of plans not yet finished by others, etc.
So she wants us to affirmatively include more in here about how we are planning to update the plan, not
Correct.
just that we can.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wants to talk about this item? Okay, without objection, let's add that in. I had lunch with Felicia yesterday, by the way, and her arm is in this, her wrist is in this major cast, and they put some kind of support inside the skin, which she can have taken out in a year, and she has substantial discomfort and but of a relatively positive attitude about it all. But because she's right-handed, she can't use her right hand, and so I carried her purse back to the waterboard for her. It weighed 23.5 pounds. It was jam full of more stuff than you could possibly proceed, and so
How's your wrist?
well, I'm an old guy. No, it's not, you put it on your shoulder, it's okay. And I said, what's in this purse? And she says, I don't really know. I don't have my computer or anything. And I said, what about a roller bag? She said, I bought one last night but didn't have time to use it. She gives us all our best wishes. She was going to be over here to say thank you and goodbye, but she couldn't make it and just sent an email. Yeah. Pardon? Yes, she was sworn in last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Okay, members, let's go to item 85, please. The staff was recommending to us a technical clarification on the phrase significant impact. Ms. Gray pulled this off. Ms. Gray. Mr. Zlotnick? Yeah.
I think Joe has had conversations about this with Greg, correct?
I have had conversations about this, and
Right. So what's your recommendation?
my recommendation is that we leave it the way it is. I understand the issue, as I've told Greg, that during the discussions about the Delta Reform Act, I had numerous discussions with parties about how significant might be defined. And in particular, the building industry was very engaged on this issue because they recognized that the Delta Reform Act had some linkages to CEQA. And CEQA has significant in there, and they recognize that the definition of significant used in the Delta Reform Act was going to be similar to the definition of significant in CEQA. And so that's why they made such an effort to make sure they were exempted from so many things in the Act. So in my view, the issue about cumulative impacts is one that was thought about during the drafting of the law, and people may not like it, but I think that's the way it is. Actually, I think our attorney could respond if necessary.
Mr. Siegel.
We were told that stakeholders wanted a definition of significant impact, that it's in the statute, and there was a desire to have more detail. And since, as Joe pointed out, the statute in many ways draws upon CEQA for its definitions. For example, one of the first requirements is that an action be a project under CEQA before it to be a covered action. And it uses the term significant impact, which is a classic CEQA term. When we were asked to look, and when Chris Stevens started looking at how do you add the details that stakeholders are looking for, we turned to CEQA, and that's what the language before you does. The direct or indirect is directly from the CEQA statute, and the cumulative impact language is directly from the CEQA guidelines.
Mr. Zlotnick?
And I don't disagree with anything that's been said. And the issue here is that, just want to be clear, that right now you have a 4-part test for a covered action, correct? And one of those is have a significant impact. And the issue here is that when you deal with the probable future of projects, And again, we are maybe, I hope not irresponsibly, but we're assuming that the implementation of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan is a probable future project, that basically anything combined with BDCP will become significant. And so it seems that essentially you're reading out that third criterion or second criterion from the definition of a covered action. And so just wanted to make sure that's what you wanted to do, because everything that is proposed that meets the other tests will have a significant impact based on the cumulative analysis. If that's the intent and that's where you want to be, that's fine. In terms of the CEQA issue, it's interesting, and although a lot of progress was made in terms of various exceptions to administrative policy, when we discussed having all the CEQA exempted projects be exempt, we were told, well, we're not dealing with CEQA, it's a different issue here. And so it's kind of interesting that for one argument you argue CEQA, and the other it's like, well, it's not really CEQA. But the main issue here was that on the cumulative effects analysis, anything that's proposed in the Delta that affects meets the other parts of the test will automatically meet the significant impact test because you're adding it on to BDCP. And so that's just wanted to make sure that's what you wanted to do. I wasn't sure it was.
Just a 2 cents. As I understand it, your staff did listen to your assertions that CEQA should be followed, and the CEQA exemptions, therefore, more or less.
No, and I acknowledge
therefore
that.
Being incorporated.
And I acknowledge that. I did acknowledge that. But just again, the point is here that with BDCP in place, anything is going to be a significant impact.
Yeah, I don't know how that all plays out. I do know that it was thought about when it was being drafted, and so I'm reluctant to support trying to change it.